here are this week's PoolTogether Community Podcast highlights. And so for me, like one of the challenges has been just even explaining the value of ENS to somebody in crypto. And so I would love to hear from the ENS steward a pitch for ENS, and like if you could just, tie it into what NameStone is providing with gasless subdomains.
In the DeFi world, privacy is very important. So what I think is the biggest value prop of ENS, it is your one-stop shop for a global identity. And the reason why a global identity is important is that we are all kind of tired of managing passwords and all these things. But why do I need to provide my email address to the fourth, fifth, or sixth DeFi application? And because like ENS is not a domain, and I think this is where the confusion kind of stems, is that people kind of associate it with a .com. But if you think of it as an identity and you think of it as your global user profile, everything starts to make sense. That means you could put the data that you feel comfortable being public into your little profile and then carry that with you to any of your applications. And as other applications start integrating ENS, you won't have to retype all that tedious information. And that's the real big value of ENS.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts on the whole on-chain, off-chain, especially since NameStone is pioneering in the off-chain ENS department.
Yeah, it's just important that we drive adoption. And there are certain things that need to be on-chain. But I also think that like on-chain versus off-chain, is that really binary? Because what are people trying to communicate when they're talking about on-chain? Usually it implies like fully decentralized. Many people understand that there's different forms of decentralization. And then there are people talking about L3s that are being kind of developed. And then that's controlled by a single entity. And at that point, if it's controlled by a single entity, is that really any different than someone holding a server? Because not everybody's a decentralized maxi. They just want to come in and they want to have fun. So I think as more things become hybrid on-chain, off-chain, like NameStone, do I really want that to be on-chain forever? No, I want it to be on-chain for now.
But yet there is still some sort of centralization because we have this ability that the ENS owner can revoke the subdomains. I think that's what you're saying, is like subdomain holders could potentially in the future have like an NFT on Optimism where they could transfer it to somebody else, that sort of thing. But ultimately, the original ENS holder would have the revoke abilities still. Could you explain that a little bit more?
What I mentioned is Namewrapper, and I'll explain what Namewrapper is. So Namewrapper is a way for you to take your ENS name and add a bunch of basically switches, light switches. Some of those light switches, you can only turn them off. And once you turn them off, you can never turn them on, which is like an analogy for trustlessness. That currently exists on layer 2. You can make your subdomains fully trustless, tradable as 1155 tokens. My understanding of the ENS roadmap is that that is coming to layer 2. Is that coming this year? No. Is it coming next year? I think so. And the people who work on ENS, they are literal geniuses, right? And I'm like, okay, these people have made their reputations on like calling things that are trustless, and calling things that aren't. So I believe there's a trustless future going to layer 2s. It would be inappropriate for me to try to describe it because it is quite technical and I'm just waiting. But my understanding, it is possible to do so, but by people a lot smarter than I am.
But there is a world where you can connect those to wallets. I want to be able to like have a command center, my dashboard, right? Maybe that's not going to happen, but at least it could partially happen. I don't know.
I think there's something I just want to make sure to clarify. Like things like cb.id and the argent.xyz, if it is not a .eth, it will never be trustless. And the reason for that is that if it's a imported DNS name, it is still in the control of ICANN. ICANN is this international body that manages the .com, .org, .id. So the only thing that could ever be fully trustless is .eth because of the way it's designed. But the moment you import something, even if you have trustless aspects to it, it's not fully trustless because it's in the real world, it's in the legal world.
That's really an interesting point with ICANN, and even with gasless subdomains using ENS, right? With the .xyzs, with these other non.eth addresses, the power is ICANN's. With .eth, the power is still in the .eth holder.
This is the thing that makes me excited about Ethereum is that something like Facebook, the EU and the American government basically had to enact laws to let you have your own data. I'm not talking about somebody else's data or, just your own data to get this like expert functionality. With Ethereum, we basically get that for free. So the NFT projects is the best or the simplest use case. You want community identity and you want to spread your brand and your meme virally. That is adding so much value to everyone. All your users become advertising. To me, it's like a no-brainer. And like our pricing starts low enough that it's not a problem. And I'm public about it. It's the first 250 names that you want to give away your community. It's only $500 a year. And we make that so easy with our community page. And then the last part, which is not only wallets, but I think it's almost any brand that wants to deeply enable their users to communicate with one another. They can use our API product to embed our service into their products. And the other thing that people might not know is that you can add a Bitcoin address. You could add a Litecoin address to your ENS profile, and we support all of that.
Thanks for listening. You can download the full episode of this week's Pool Together Community Podcast on your favorite podcast app.